Okay, and we are recording. Hey, Thrift Boss Babes. It's
Hey,
Sammy D here with Sonia.
hello.
She's in sunny Texas and I'm in very cold New York. It's about 31 today. Sonia, how's the weather in Austin?
I was just outside in a t-shirt feeding these the birds, so it's nice. It's like 60, 62, 64, and it's still early in the morning.
Oh
So
my gosh. I love
yeah,
it. I love it.
yeah.
So, guys, Sonia is in Austin, Texas, if you didn't just learn that. And she's been there for a number of years. And Sonia is someone I've known in the vintage world for a very long time because of my YouTube career. I was able to meet her in person actually last year or 2018. I guess now it's almost been 2 years. Just
Almost 2 years. Yeah.
and visited her amazing 2,500 square foot store, Revival Vintage. And we were having a chat last week and discussing profits and margins and accounting and just different ways of really just putting on your business hat when you are such a creative. And Sonia has a huge business. She has people on payroll. She operates a little bit differently than you might understand a brick and mortar store normally does. So we're going to allow her to share all of that with you. But I want to start off this interview with just asking Sonia to walk us through her vintage resale career because I know a little bit about it, and you guys, your minds are going to be blown by basically just her history. So Sonia, take it away. Tell us more. Who are you?
Yes, yes. Well, I've always been a thrifter.
Yeah.
It happened when, me and my mom were like poor and that's all we could afford. And then even when, she got remarried and, we ended up having a little bit of money, and it was like, I was still hitting those thrift stores. It was like, I've always loved vintage. I've always loved like one of a kind pieces, which I think really drew me more to the vintage. Like in high school, like I wore like a 1950s cocktail dress, which back when I went to high school was not the look. Everyone's in their peach taffeta and things like
Totally.
that. So yeah, I just always loved it. Um, and I didn't really think of it as a career. It was just something that was sort of like my hobby. And then it really came down to I was, getting older, and I was like, what do I really want to do? Like, I've been waiting tables and doing bar business and doing like retail.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, let me try and actually do this as a living before like I have to like go to a 9 to 5 or something,
Yeah.
that I would probably hate.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of dabbled. It was like 2010. I started an Etsy site. And then which was mostly clothing. And then I got a little spot at a local antique mall,
Mm-hmm.
just a tiny spot, me and a girlfriend. And I mean, that was good. It was a nice experience. It was like, it's exciting to see like, when things sell and like what's selling.
Right. Was this
And
in
it was,
Austin or was this in
this
Philadelphia?
was all in Austin. Yeah.
Okay.
And then my girlfriend that I was sort of like partners with, the restaurant she worked at, it was across the street, was um, an open little store, and it was like right where like North Loop is, where it's like all these other vintage stores. And there's like a record store there. And there's like a couple bars, so it's like that would be like such a good place to to do vintage. And we went to her, and somebody had already signed a lease, so we just went on to like the antique mall. And then she ended up moving, and then I was at the antique mall for a little bit, and there was a booth that was like next to us that was beautiful mid-century, and they were opening up their own store, and I was like, I want a store. So I drove by the old place, and it was for rent again. So I called the woman, and I was like, hey, I don't know if you remember me from last year, but I'm still interested in the space if it's still available. And she was like, well, let me get back to you. And 2 days later, she called me. She's like, it's yours if you want it. I signed the papers like a week later. And then, 4 weeks later, I don't even think it was 4 weeks. I think it was like 3 weeks. I was like open. So it was a tiny store, which, and it was great. Like, it was perfect for me, like right off the bat. I mean, it was like, less than 500 square feet. So it was like a little bit of clothing, a little bit of knickknacks, and a little bit of furniture.
Cool.
But yeah, it was, so that was for almost 5 years. And then 2 stores down from me, this video store was going out of business. And I was like, oh man, that's a shame. Then I was like, well, wait a minute. So I was like, let's check on that rent, which was quite the sticker shock. I mean, Austin's expensive, small, just retail is expensive. And so, but I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm just going to go for it. Like, cause I felt like, and I was ready to sort of like, spread my wings a little bit. Like me and this other woman were kind of looking at spaces, maybe thinking of something. And I was like, this is 2 stores down. So I feel like if you move, people are like, oh, did they close? Where are they? People are lazy. They don't want to research things, It was like 2 stores down would be perfect. And and then like 3 months later, I was in there.
And this is 2,500 square feet.
Yeah.
That was a massive video store.
28, yeah. It was. They had a big VHS section also, so they took up a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was it's big, and I mean it was overwhelming, and that's why I brought in vendors, because I was like, if anything, at least my rent will be paid. Like it was a lot, and plus I can't fill that. Like I could barely source for 500 square feet. So that's been 2 years now.
This is a great segue question, Sonia. So basically, guys, Sonia's store, it's Revival Vintage. It's in an area of Austin where there's a couple other vintage stores. I did a video showcasing her store, which I will actually download and upload to Thrift Boss Babes later today so that you guys can really fully understand what this amazing, just like her second home looks like. I just wanted to sleep there. So Sonia, can you walk us through, I know this isn't quite our next question, but walk us through how Revival Vintage works with your vendors.
So if you've been to like an antique mall, you sort of see that it's different, like different booths. So it's like people pay rent for the booth, and then I also get a percentage of every sale, which helps pay for payroll, electricity, and all those sort of things. And at first I just did like a 3-month lease, and now it's just sort of like month to month. I mean, at this point we do have like people that are like really want to come in, and it kind of changes. It's like sometimes maybe someone's aesthetic doesn't really work, or so it works out pretty good for me. It's nice to have that security, that the financial security, that it's like, okay, like if it's if no one's coming, at least the rent is paid, and right. That's really why I didn't want to do consignment, because it's like if people just bring stuff in, you don't know if it's going to sell, like, it's iffy, it's too much paperwork. So I was just like, consignment is definitely not something I want to do. But not to say that other stores, like if you're selling clothing, that other stores don't want to do that. Sometimes when I first started, I did do consignment because I didn't have enough inventory to keep it stocked. So if people are looking into selling, that might be an option for people to do, because I did do that initially, but now it's just it's too much to deal with at this point.
So essentially, your vendors pay you every month a rental fee to have their pieces, which is furniture and clothing.
Yes.
You specialize in both. So guys, if you walk into her store, you'll see this all in my video. It's like little vignettes of rooms. I want to say you have about 9, maybe 8.
Yeah.
The back is clothing. And then she has some sort of like vintage inspired, stationery, knickknacks, things like that in the middle. So people pay you to have their space, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So
how else? I mean, so Austin, I would say Portland, Austin, might be missing, maybe even LA, New York a little bit. Vintage hubs, right? We're not just talking thrifting, we're talking vintage. So you have a lot of competition. How else do you set yourself apart?
Well, at first, like the name Revival came because like when I knew I wanted to start a business, I knew I wanted to be a green business. And so I definitely wanted like the word like art, like re in it. And so there was this club that I went to in Philadelphia back in the day, and it
Yeah.
popped up having their anniversary, and it was called Revival because it was at this church. And I was like, oh my God, Revival, that's it. And so like at first I was like, I'm gonna make things like modern. I'm gonna like, like change, like, I'm gonna like shorten dresses. Like, I'm gonna like, redo everything. And it's like, oh, that's like a full-time job in itself, is
Yeah.
just to have time to do all that. And I don't really know how to sew and things like that. So initially that was my first like that was gonna be my niche. I mean, and truthfully, it's just, being who we are. Like, I just want really good customer service. Like, I want us to have really affordable things. Like, people always come in with clothing and furniture and say that the price is so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there are special things that, yes, you should charge more. But it's like at the end of the day, people just want to look cute. And, like, that's what, or they want their house to look nice. Like, we're the vessel for that, So it's, we just really want to keep it affordable for everyone. Austin again is an expensive city, and it's a city that they spend a lot of money on food and drink, and
Totally.
weirdly I don't see it too much on anything else. Like they will splurge on that for their experiences, but like when it comes to shopping, I feel like they're still a little tight, so I feel like anyone can walk in and get something.
Yeah. Yeah.
An $18 t-shirt or, a print, whatever it is.
If you guys check out Shop Revival Vintage, the Instagram handle, what I love is that you see the furniture and the price, and then it's edited to say if it's sold or not. And pretty much everything gets sold. I mean, I don't really often see something that's not sold. And me being in New York City and everything's about 3 times the cost, I'm like, oh, I wish I could have that. I wish I could have that. And so I think it's really interesting, Sonia, your model, because of course, you're right. You could be asking for more, but you're selling more at a lower price point, and you're not sourcing. If you were sourcing, obviously your time is more valuable, so you might want to actually increase the cost of something, but you're not, so you're able to offer that. So walk us through like even the technical side of how you keep track of everyone's inventory. Like how do you know it's stuff sells and how to pay them? Like what? It's so confusing.
It's been a learning curve, but I mean, we've done pretty good actually from the back. Like we use Square as our POS, which is really nice because it's like you can set it like every vendor has a category. So like FC, Full Circle, like so we manually like punch it in. It's not like it's like a one hit thing. I mean, we do have to write in the description. It does take a little bit at the register. And truthfully, and like, we'll do like a little star like on the tag if it's on Instagram, so we know like to write that it's sold on Instagram. I mean, really, Square does a really good job of keeping track for you. And then we just do Google spreadsheets for like, we do it every 2 weeks during pay period. I manually write out checks to people. Sometimes I'll PayPal them or Venmo them if it's under a certain amount. But it makes it pretty easy. Squares, I love Square. Like they're great. They'll give you loans. They, everything is like in your bank the next day. You can really set it up to sort of any sort of configuration that you want. You can do, percentages off. They do a nice thing where you can, you can do an email and they'll give like people like $5 off. So it's really a good system, and it really does keep track of that. And then we also just keep a manual daily log. It's like a spiral notebook, like we write down like, again, like FC denim 501, $68 or whatever it is. So that's, so we are old school about that, but.
So you can compare the digital to the spiral notebook.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So when we go through spreadsheets, we go through the spiral notebook, and then we check the number at the end with the Square.
Got it.
So it's a good way. It really like balances it out, because sometimes things, might get lost, obviously. So it works out pretty good. I mean, and it's good. We do them like every Friday so people know what they've sold during the week, and then we do it every Monday so they know what they've sold during the weekend.
Now, do
So
you communicate with your vendors? And this is like such a nitty-gritty question, but obviously as store owners, we manage a lot. We manage a lot of communication. Do you text them? Do you email them? How do you let them know what's sold?
we email the spreadsheets, but if something big
Okay.
sells, we do text them, because especially if it's moved out, because that's just, it's real estate. Like if they have something behind it that they want to bring in, yeah. So yeah, we'll definitely text them to let them know, or we'll text them to be like, hey, can you do anything more than 10%? If somebody's asking or if somebody offers. But texting normally works. And we do also, like, our shop phone is a cell phone, so we can text them through the shop phone, so it's not like anyone on duty's personal phone.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
which is nice. And it's also really good for customers too, because if somebody sees a chair, they're like, can you show me the legs on it? We can
Yeah,
text them and just send
from
it
the
right
shop,
from the shop phone. Yeah,
cell phone. I never even thought, but you're right that it creates a little bit some breath of separation.
exactly. Yeah.
Or some space of separation. Now, it's fascinating that you're sharing this with me, and I just want to bring back to our community whom we're speaking to and whom your
Yeah.
experience and your wisdom can inspire. A lot of our vintage sellers here are paying other markets for rent, so they're paying $300 to show whatever. What
Yeah.
Sonia could inspire in you is to bring on one of your peers who wants to start in vintage and might not actually want to be the one doing the grunt work. So you go to a market, it's $300, but then you have a rack of their clothes and they're paying you $100 for you to actually have their clothes.
Yeah.
And then you can, quote unquote, sell them for them, get a little bit of commission because
Yeah.
you're doing the work selling them. And then when you sell your vintage, right, which ideally is a little bit different than theirs, you're able to make more profit because you haven't put in the $300, right? You put in
Right.
200.
Yeah.
And speaking to one of our members, she had a lot of resistance to a spiral notebook system. But I think what Sonia's saying is that you just got to do it, right? Like it's annoying, but
Yeah. Well, and it's other, it's other people's like livelihood. It's like I can't, just be like, oh, I'll figure it out.
right.
Oh, it'll all work out. Oh, what's a $20 difference? It's like, no, that's $20. Like, So, but yeah, I mean, I definitely like. I mean, like we have so many pop-ups. Like pop-ups are so fun. Like I know a couple of women like they like share a space and they like have like sort of like a collective together, but they each have their own racks. I mean, there's definitely, like now we're buying from the public. I mean, that might be something, if it's not vintage or even if it's, I know we have like a lot of like upscale consignment. But if you have vintage, like reach out to some of the local vintage shops and see if they're, if they're buying, it's like, we definitely have a sort of burn and turn. Like we don't want to give things away, but it's like, and vintage is one of a kind. So it's like, it's fun to make that like urgency of like, you need to get this now because there's only one. And it's a 24 waist 30 inseam, which is like your measurement, right. Like you need this,
Right. Oh, so, the things I regret not buying that I've never seen again. I've seen the same label or silhouette, but not quite the same piece.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, there's definitely, we have one vendor and he wholesales to just so many other stores. And, I think he's, it's if he knows it's not working at our space, he'll turn around and go somewhere else. Like that might be something of like if you're doing pop-ups and something has been on your rack for 3 times, it's like, okay, either lower the price or like, maybe do a swap with another vendor, like, it's things like that, just to sort of like keep an eye on like what is selling and what isn't selling. If it's for us, it's like we have a lot of views on Instagram, so it's like if people aren't like excited about it within a couple of weeks, it's like, mark it down. This isn't, it's either too high or it's not desirable for your customer.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And you have, again, this like burn and turn philosophy. So you're not going to hold on to it for another 2 years until like the right
Yeah. I
celebrity
mean, and
has.
truthfully, the only thing I have like in my storage unit like is seasonal, like, Christmas sweaters or things like that. I mean, maybe if something's pretty special, but like, do like your season sales. It's just like, okay, and even though like like it's hard here in Texas because it's always warm. So it's like, we're like, oh, let's just do like jackets for sale. And it's like, well, people still like want jackets, because it's
Right.
cold everywhere else. But yeah, I mean, just definitely like always be like 6 weeks ahead of like what's happening, like get ready for your spring stuff now, and things like that, just to get rid of whatever the past season is.
Mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm.
know
Love it. So let's talk about some of the money obstacles that you've run into. Now, I know there's
yes,
many to share because you've been
many,
in this
many,
for
many.
10 years now, but maybe 2 to 3 that you're just like, okay, we hit this block and here's how we overcame it.
Yeah. Well, it was, I mean, yeah, money and time is always the biggest obstacles,
Money,
and
time.
it's, and I mean, and I definitely get to hustle mode. Like if it's like, oh, like I am short on rent, like, or rent's coming up like next week and I still need this. It's like, I will do those Instagram sales. I will push it.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was like big money that I really needed, like again, like Square was really good to offer loans. Like
Yeah,
even if it's, when you first started and it's like a couple thousand, it's like, I mean, I think they offered me like a crazy amount. Like I looked and I was like, oh, well, I could put that down on a house, it's,
right.
so they're really good. I feel like they're very supportive of small businesses. Because, truthfully, like, I don't know if I could have gotten a bank loan. Like, I don't think so. Like, I don't have great credit, I don't really own anything. Like, we still sort of technically rent this house. So it's like, I don't have that money that banks look for, and it's, as a small business owner, like, I'm not like making big money on books. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
the business is successful, but how much of that is Sonia Wright's money? It's like Revival Vintage's money is a little bit different. And it's, when I first opened, I try not to have like a huge overhead. Like I didn't, luckily my husband's a carpenter, so he really helps like with a lot of the build out. But I asked for friends like to help me paint and like to do stuff. It's, it sort of takes a village when when the times are tough. I've had friends that have come in and just to like have like an extra warm body, just to like, so I don't have to pay like someone on payroll.
Mm-hmm.
You just sort of like have to look at things and really evaluate, what you can do and what you can save on.
Yeah.
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 So yeah, it's constantly a struggle. It's constantly, like, I mean, that's one thing is like, I really wish like I need to get a bookkeeper this year, because it's like, I really need to like look at numbers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
So you're not
so
working with QuickBooks right now.
no,
Okay.
no. I don't know anything about QuickBooks. I've never used them. I just use, it's like an accounting thing through GoDaddy. They used to be
Mm-hmm.
their own separate thing, and then GoDaddy bought them. But I've used them since I've started. So like I've been with them 7 years. So it's just like, I just know how to do it. It's super simple. I mean, it's great. It's definitely, there's so many great tools out there that like, you just insert the data, and then at the end of the year you have your reports and you have your income versus expenses. I mean, I would definitely get on that. I'm
So,
also looking at something for receipts, since I have to keep so many receipts. Like I think I need to like scan a receipt, or like you take a picture, just to keep track of that, because it's like I have to keep like every little piece of paper, and it's like overwhelming. It's so much paperwork.
right. Right.
Yeah.
So you with GoDaddy, is it set up as like a P&L, profit and loss, where it's connected to all of your accounts, or is it
Yes.
just
Yeah.
okay, then that's
Um,
That's your
Yeah.
bookkeeper right now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, and it's great. Like, yeah, it does give you tons of, good information. I mean, I just need a bookkeeper because it's like, we're, as in brick and mortar, like you can spend more money on like advertising, and like they know the ins and outs of like where you should spend your money and where you shouldn't. Because I
And
just
also,
feel like,
things don't get categorized. Like I have a bookkeeper myself, and so when things are automatically plug and chug, which it's disappointing to hear this because you want it to be easier, but you do need someone to go in and actually make sure that what GoDaddy or QuickBooks has absorbed is being digitally placed in the right category. So it might be like a restaurant, but for some reason it fell into advertising when it
right,
uploaded. So they have to be able to like sort through that. And then also if you have cash receipts, or for example, you forget your business credit card and you buy something substantial. I mean, some things you just don't care about. You're just like, okay, whatever. I bought that for my business and my personal. I'm just
right,
not going to make sure. I'm not going to try to get that into my, accounting
right.
tracking. But so GoDaddy. I'm curious, how can our audience here in Thrift Boss Babes access what you have with GoDaddy, and how much does it cost?
Mm, Gosh,
I've never
I
seen
want to
it.
say it's like 100 something a month.
Okay,
Um, I mean, not a month, sorry, a year. I'm like, yeah,
that's
no,
pretty
just a
cheap.
year.
A year
Um,
is pretty cheap. Yeah.
yeah, it's manageable, and and I think I did it for 3 years, and you get like a little bit more off. Um, yeah, again, it's just I think it's just they'll put that all in for you. I mean, it's super simple, and it is really nice just to keep track. And it's like if you do it like weekly, monthly, it's like you really do see expenses versus income, because at the end of the day it's like you need to be making more than you're spending. And it's like with thrifting, it is sort of hard because it's like when it's there you get it. It's not like you're like, well, I'm going to wait a couple weeks. It's like if you're constantly sourcing, you're just constantly buying. So you just sort of need to keep an eye on like how much you are spending. And there's slow times every year, seasonals, like it's but so it's important to just keep an eye on that, at least I would say monthly at least, or quarterly at the minimum.
And I think that this is really great information, because it's that extra sauce that like we pretend we don't have time for, but really that's what makes a business not just a hobby.
Yeah.
Which is when you actually really fully understand your numbers, and it's okay to be spending a little bit more than you're making as long as you have a cash flow, in operation, so that you're pulling from the cash to support yourself to some degree, but then you know that you're also acquiring more cash. When
Right.
it stops, then you're screwed. But as long as the system continues,
Right.
but what are some other ways? Because obviously it comes down to expenses, and I think as business owners, we make a lot of mistakes on what we spend money on, more so in the first 1 to 5 years than we do later, when we realize, as you were saying, like where we can ask for help, where we can get things for free, where we can forget about buying Charmin toilet paper and instead buy the generic kind. So
Right.
what are some things you've done to cut back on expenses with Revival?
I've really started buying in bulk,
Okay.
which it's like me and the girls at the shop have this running joke because I bought this like case uh mailing tape,
Mm-hmm.
which is like when I was doing more Etsy, like we were using it a little bit more. But it's like I bought that 3 years ago, and I think I still have like 3 rolls left.
I'll
Like,
buy
but
some
I
from you.
was spending like $6 on one thing, and this
Right.
thing was like $89 or something. Like, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous, like how much I saved from it. So
Yeah.
they're like, "Are we done with this tape yet?" I was like, "Nope, not yet."
I love it.
Yeah, I mean that definitely, and of course, I do have a business that it's like we do use a lot, but like bags and things like that. I mean, even like toilet paper and
Mhm.
paper towels, it's just like I just do bulk. There is a pretty decent company that I found. I feel like the company's good, but their sales representatives are not that great. Sorry to say that, but
Mm-hmm.
they're called Quill, and they give you a lot of like add-ons. So it's like, buy this thing of, paper towels and you get free coffee, or, just weird things like that. It's like, it actually kind of like adds up. So
It adds up. Totally.
yeah. And, just recently I started going through my, just looking at my bank account, and it's like, there was a lot of things that were automatically taken out. And I'm like, wait, what is this? I was like, it was something that I haven't used in 6 months that I thought I terminated the lease with, or, so it's like, go back and like just double check, or even just see if you can get things like cheaper. Like, people always do that with like their internet. I just did that for my insurance, because I think when I opened the store, I was like, everything needs to be insured for, $5 million. And it's like, well, not necessarily. So, maybe go back and check things like that. It's like, you have to remind my staff that it's like, okay, don't go over this amount of hours. Like, if it's slow, you're more than welcome to leave. Payroll for me is very big. It's like, at the same time, it's like they're thinking that they're getting these hours, so you want to keep the minimum, but it's like, at the same time, it's like going over 3 hours can, like a week can really, mess with my finances. So I just have to keep them on track with that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's just, I've even stopped like doing like events, because it's like, I feel like I spend more money than it actually brings in, which everyone like wants events. They want events. And it was like, we were doing like Thirsty Thursdays where we'd stay open. And it was like, I would buy like food and snacks, and it was like, it wasn't worth it for the sales and the payroll. And it's like, well,
Right.
we're really not going to do this. So
Right.
just keeping an eye on, what is working and what isn't. It's always okay to change something, or to stop something, or to, to add something, like,
Yeah.
be like, if, people are staying, like Saturdays, like maybe I should stay open later and, have some beers or something, like, will that case of beer, will the extra sales, like, I mean, it probably will. So, just, look at things like that and see, what can work and what isn't working. I feel like what isn't working is a huge thing, because it's not, it's like, we think of it as a failure. It's like, oh, this is going to be so fun. And you're like, it didn't work out, but it's okay if it didn't work out. Who cares?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is
So,
great. I think a lot of us, especially when we're first starting out, or if we really are focused on the creative side of what we do in resale, we're afraid of numbers. And we actually shame ourselves. I think a lot of us, especially
yeah.
women, we shame ourselves about being concerned with numbers.
Yeah.
Like, money's evil. Like,
Yeah.
money's not evil.
Yeah. No,
The
no.
actions you take with it that are evil.
Yeah.
Anyway, so money is your friend. Money is your teacher, right? So what is
Yeah.
money teaching you in your business? For Sonia, money taught her that these big events don't convert to actual dollars from the event, where, okay, she made money, but what it might teach her is to do something a little bit different. Just get 2 cases of beer that cost like, what, $20, and
Right.
keep the store open for an extra 2 hours. Tell her employee to go home. She's just there, and she makes another $300 because someone just really decides to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
But you do have to go through the mistakes, like myself included. Just last night, I went on GoDaddy, because I own a lot of domains, and I buy domains when I'm inspired, because I'm constantly inspired, and I'm actually working on being less inspired this year. I know that makes no sense. I'm working on like just really, focus Fox. So I had a domain called Thrifter University that I canceled for renewal because I'm not going to use it. I have one called School of Thrift that I'm going to keep because I think I'll
Love
use that. I had one called Minds Changed to Thrift because I wanted to create a whole landing page for people to learn about thrifting. I don't have time for that. Canceled it.
Yeah.
Used to have a domain called sammyd.tv, and I've decided, you know what, I'm not even running that website. It's my Instagram handle, but I don't need it. Like
Yeah.
that's not the domain. Now I still have Thrift Babes, which I haven't built anything on, but I'm keeping that. And I have Thrift Con, which I'm actually trying to sell because someone else has a business called Thrift Con and I got the URL before them. But anyway, long story short, I canceled all of these URLs that I just mentioned, and I realized it was by $80.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was going to be automatically renewed.
Yeah.
That I was
Exactly.
like, I'm not using them. And of course, I'm like, okay, I wish I hadn't bought them in the first place, but that's how I was feeling. And I've learned
Yeah.
now, I'm like, Sammy, like, you don't need any more domains. You're good.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
so
You got a lot.
So I encourage everyone who's watching this to take a day, especially now that tax season is upon us, and have a coffee date with your numbers
Yeah.
and make
Yeah.
notes about where you're spending money that you might
Yeah.
want to just remind yourself to pull back on. Of course, you can't be like this all the time, but to a degree, if it's in your subconscious, you're going to start taking different actions. And then obviously things that are automatically charged that you may or may not need, make a note and get yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Just
And you also have to think of it like, I mean, that's like, don't sweat the little stuff sometimes, but it's like also like, I mean, I look at things in payroll numbers, so it's like,
right.
Oh, X amount of dollars, like I could have had like Christy at the shop for like 4 hours. Like that's huge, or being like, wow, I could have like gone and spent like a whole day thrifting for that $300. Like, I mean, and think of like how the money, like what that $300 could have made. So it's like you have to put it in a mindset that like that is important to you. Like, like for me, like the payroll or or like, if you have kids, like, wow, I could have gotten an extra 5 hours out of babysitting, like for a babysitter or whatever it is, it's make it think like turn it into not just the number, but like what you would do with that $80.
I completely love that.
Yeah. Or like if you like to go out to dinner, be like, that could have been a nice dinner for me and my husband, whatever it is. Yeah.
It definitely comes down to how do you value your time, which is our next question. But before I jump into that, I was just reminded myself, and maybe you think the same. When you break down the amount of money you make in a certain window, how much are you making per hour? And I realized that with a top tour, including commute, which if I'm not including commute, it's more per hour, but including commute, I make about $75 an hour.
Damn.
So like a top tour, like sold
yeah.
out, right? So when I'm doing other things, what is my hourly wage? Like if it's $10 an hour, like I'm gonna have to think differently about that because I want my minimum to be 75. So for me to spend 3 hours listing things on eBay, whatever, and then the next day I make $300, then I made $100 an hour.
Right.
I mean, I still have to pack it and ship it. So maybe it breaks down to 75. So that's even getting more specific because then the packing and shipping. So, but here's the thing, like, don't sweat the small stuff, but the more that you think about these things and give them attention, I do believe in like law of attraction, power of the universe, things start to work in your favor as long as you're like, okay, I'm getting better, I'm getting stronger.
Yeah.
I understand my business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for you, Sonia, I think something else that is a currency for you is lifestyle. And we were briefly talking about that last time we were on the phone together. What does your business afford you that is important for you?
Well, definitely freedom. I mean, it did take me 3 years to not work pretty much every day. Like I think it took me a year not to be open 7 days a week.
Thanks for being honest about that.
Yeah, it was, and I'm very fortunate that it's like my husband's been my number one cheerleader. I mean, he is able to keep our lights on and like, pay for food and things like that. It's like, I mean, if I was doing this as a single woman, I could not have, I wouldn't have made it this far.
Yeah.
I mean, it would not have been enough to pay my bills and to do everything that I needed to do. And so, at this point, it's like, since I do have a staff, it's like, I take that time. It's like, well, if somebody's going to be there and it's kind of slow, like, I'm going to leave early, or I've planned, in October we went away for like almost 2 weeks, and it was like, I know I have good people, things are getting done. It's like we enjoy travel, and we did another trip during the holidays, which was like a little bit over a week. It's like that definitely is what I need. Like, I need to get out of it, because like, I mean, burnout is a thing. As much as like I love my store, sometimes I get in there and I'm like, ugh, it's a lot. It's like you spend a lot of time there. It's it's your baby. So it's like I definitely feel that like time is what I take the most for
Time to
myself.
freedom. Time
Yeah.
to freedom. Right. And like, there aren't many jobs in America. Things are changing, but that give you the
Yeah.
chance to really
Yeah.
be like, okay, like, I'm gonna leave at 3. Like, how many jobs, they're 9 to 5s? Like, you
Yeah.
have, like, there's nothing happening. You kind of
Well,
have
and
to say,
that's the whole point of like being an entrepreneur. It's like it's up to you. It's your hours. It's you get what you put into it. But a brick and mortar is a different thing, because it's like you have to be open. So
right.
it's like I'm very fortunate that I've gotten to this point where I am able to do that. And it doesn't mean that I'm not at the store when I'm not scheduled. It's like I'm constantly sourcing, and, I'm picking up couches. I'm, shopping. I'm trying to do day trips. I'm doing spreadsheets. Like, I mean, I'm working, but I don't have to be the shop girl. Like, I don't need to be ringing people out. There's other things at this point that I need to do. I think of myself as a creative director. So I go in and I redo all the booths. I redo the clothing section. I do, I make it look the way that it is. Like, that's my number one. That's what I love to do the most. And, that's what people love the most out of the store. It's not just like everything's thrown in. Everything is vignettes. Everything is curated. Everything is clean, so it's a lot. And so I just realized it's like, that's what I want. I want to just be able to travel. Like, I looked at my vision board last year, and it said friends, food, and drink. And it was like, I got to a little bit of it, but it really was not as much as I want. There's girlfriends that I've seen maybe 3 times this year that live 2 miles away. Like, that's just not, it's not acceptable. Life is too short. Like, you just have to, there's always money to be made, but like you're always gonna miss like time. Like, there's not enough time. Like, you can hustle like next month, but it's like, if your friend's having a birthday party, go to that birthday party. Like, I'm really trying to just have all those friends and family in my life and see them.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I think to a degree, when you are giving back to yourself is when things come to you. So when you treat yourself, and I'm saying treat, but like when you create that space for yourself to be like, well, like, I'm living my life and I'm abundant, then the abundance comes. And then because you're not contracted, you're expanding.
Yeah.
But with all that said, I know that you've been in business for a long time, and you've noticed trends or weaknesses or areas of improvement. So you, Sonia, forecasting this year, forecasting another 5 years in business, what are some things that you'd really like to build upon, work on, improve upon as a business owner?
Right now it's like with the business, I'm trying to sort of like, I just got rid of my old website, which I'm sort of now kicking myself, because it was like information out there that I still needed, that now I need to like go back and research and find. But I'm trying to do like shoppable pins. I feel like moving a little bit of the smaller product is pretty big for us this year. Definitely focusing more on the fashion end. It's like I devoted the past 2 years so much in the furniture department, that I feel like, okay, like we have this system now, like we know what to do with it. And I feel like I've let the clothing sort of take the back seats. I'm really like focusing on getting that, more out there. you know, I'm thinking of doing like a restyling sort of side project, you know, since people love the curation of the store. It's like what it would be like me going into people's homes and using like already like what they have. I feel like people have good stuff. They just don't know how to put it together.
Right. All the,
Yeah, you know, and like that's, you know, it's fun for me because it's like I can source and like take this lamp and do this, you know,
I
and put
totally
it
hire you for
together.
that.
Yeah, so it's
I
like I
love
feel like
that
I have a
idea.
lot of, yeah, I have a lot of experience with just like meshing different styles together.
Hmm.
Um, and really that's really about it. We're gonna do a 7-year itch party for the store this March. You know, I was listening to this podcast about like people try to do like 3 months ahead, and I'm like, I just can't, like, I'm like, there's a couple big things that I want to focus on, but you know, just keep moving. Like, I'd like to get some more press into the store. It's like, I mean, I'm really sort of bummed that there hasn't been any write-ups or anything about us, and I don't know if that's something that I need to go and put out.
Hmm.
But you know, Austin has just become such a big city that it's like, how do you get the word out? You know, it's like,
Hmm.
you know, paper doesn't really work anymore. Like, obviously we have Instagram and Facebook, but if they're not following you, then they're not following you.
Hmm.
So just sort of like still just getting more customers in through the door, I feel like it's still pretty, you know, pretty important. Like, I'd like to reach 10,000 followers on Instagram. We're at like 77. So I feel like that could be attainable in the next couple months. You know, maybe like then you could do the swipe up, and that would
Right.
give, you know, so then maybe it's like, do I do a blog and try and like monetize that? You know, but I don't really know in the vintage world what I could monetize. So there's things, you know, I mean, obviously just growing the numbers. I was just shy 11,000 of my goal for last year, but it was pretty close. It was pretty close. I mean, we definitely have, you know, gotten bigger numbers from a lot from previous years. So
Hmm.
so things are good, you know. Everything is just growing and growing. So
I feel
yeah.
what your story is really a testimony to. And even you know my own story to a degree. It's like just things take time,
Yeah.
and it's truly a long game in any
Correct.
business.
Yeah.
Um, Even if you make a lot of money right away, things are going to change and evolve, and you have to be willing to change and evolve with them. And also
Mm-hmm.
to a degree, kind of stay with something that might just not be working temporarily, just to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Where like you're saying your vintage clothing was never really your bread and butter, but now that the furniture is very established, you can put more time and attention into that so that it might eventually equal, if not surpass.
Yeah.
But you know, here you are almost 7 years into business, right? And so it's like it takes time,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And for anyone to think that they're going to reach what I don't know what like the definition of your top is in 2 years or even 1 year. Like you're not.
Right.
I have to remind myself of that almost every day because I think like,
Yeah.
oh, it's I can do this in 2 months or 3 months, but I really can't.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
can't. And that's when you know, because if you're in that behavior and that mindset, that's when you're not going to your friends' birthday parties.
Right. Yeah.
Like so
Well, and it's, you know, and it's funny because people are like, oh, you know, oh, I love to thrift. And, you know, oh, I just started an Etsy store. And it's like, yeah, thrifting is the fun part. It's like selling it is the hard part.
yeah,
You know, you can buy and buy and buy. And it's like, oh, look, you know, look what I found. And it's like
yeah.
getting to the point of where, you know, how to sell it I mean, it's hard. It's,
Hmm.
you know, I've been hearing, you know, things about how people are like leaving Etsy and they're not satisfied with selling on Etsy. And, you know, there's so many different places that, yeah, you just sort of needs to like hunker down and just like do it, you know. And if thrifting is what you love and that's all you want to do is just do that, and you don't necessarily like have to have an Etsy store or Depop store, you know, or be in a vintage mall or anything, you know, then just wholesale. Like, just go to Buffalo, go to these vintage stores, go to consignment stores. Like, if you just like the hustle or like the you know, the treasure seeking, you know, then just sell it. You know, I mean, that's what a lot of people just like love is like which I, you know, it's like, you know, 20 years later, it's like when you see something, you're like, oh God, I'm so excited.
You still have the reaction. And I love that too, because a lot of times, right, we're like, oh, well, you know, I want to have a, you know, prosperous business like Sonia. But with Sonia's business comes a lot of responsibility, guys. So recognizing where you feel comfortable falling on the food chain is invaluable. So that self understanding, and don't compare yourself where you're like, well, if she's doing it, I should be able to. Like, that's not what it's about. Like, there's a place for everyone. And what I love about Sonia's model is that she's created something where she's helping others as well as herself, so that she can actually allow others to have a space where they're selling without selling. And then she's giving herself time and attention to do what she loves to do, which is styling and being a creative director. So yeah, I've loved this chat, Sonia. I think that some of the takeaways, just to reiterate to everyone, is that numbers are your friend.
Yes.
And to give yourself the time, and yes, it's additional time, and yes, it's annoying, and yes, writing in a spiral notebook feels like 1955.
Correct.
But literally, like, the simple things are usually the things that work. It's like, I like to talk about this way with health, where people think they need to follow some like crazy diet, when I'm like, you just gotta eat healthy.
Yeah.
It's not about like these food combinations and macros.
Right.
So, give yourself permission to look at your finances. Don't be upset at yourself, but also be willing to change so that you can make the right changes, so that 2020 looks different than maybe 2019 did.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Sonia, is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap this up?
Not really. I mean, I just think this is like a really like exciting time. Like, I mean, people are really into like sustainable living, and obviously like thrifting and vintage are like, you know, a main thing. It's just, I feel like this business is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. If it's, you know, whatever it is, it's just, you know, secondhand is, it's the way of the future.
It is. I love it. Done. Fine.
Done.
All right, Sonia, thank you so much for joining us today. And everyone, go visit Revival Vintage in Austin.
Yay.
Ciao, guys.
Ciao.